Today was another day that I had to paint from indoors. I'm still quite sick and I don't want to get so sick that it might get in the way of this project. So I have to be careful. But today I got to paint a view from my kitchen that I always stare at in the mornings because there's very beautiful light even before the sun starts shining onto this location. It looks very, very nice, and that's kind of what I wanted to do today. I wanted to paint it before the sun came down, but I just thought about it a bit too late, and so I just had to make do with what I had, which is still not half as bad, to be honest. I kind of like the composition, how it's framed between these two buildings that don't offer the same amount of vibrancy that the trees and the snow gets. But at the same time, the color of the buildings is not so horrible or out of place that it really disbalances the whole picture. I actually took the picture that you're seeing there as reference after I was done painting, so the colors are not going to be exactly the same. They're actually going to be softer, but the composition is kind of the same. I also just used my artistic license to remove that car from the composition, but now looking back, I think that it wouldn't be so bad to add it because there was a lot of space that I didn't know what to do with, and I just tried to fill it up with some things that I know that are there, but I'm not exactly sure what are there. So yeah, now cleaning up the palette from yesterday's mess, and here we go. I feel like today's painting was a bit easier for me to get around and understand what I needed to do first, because it's a view that I stare at a lot. Not only in winter. Now in winter it looks especially beautiful because of the colors, but also throughout the year. I haven't been living in this house for long. Me and my girlfriend just bought this summer, actually. So I can safely say that I've stared at this at least once a day for 6 months, which is not a bad thing to stare at. Now, I'm trying to learn from the mistakes from previous days, so I'm going a little bit more careful with the application of paint. I'm trying to go over each area or each passing only once, and here you'll see me do a bit of a gradient in the least amount of brush strokes possible. And I am already spotting a mistake that I did right now, and I don't know if you can know what that is. If you have an idea, put it in the comments below. But it is that I did not pre-mix all the colors that I wanted to use in the sky. And one of the biggest troubles I faced today was that shimmering glow of the snow. I could not really get the color right, or at least I couldn't see the color being right in the palette, and when I applied it I also felt like it was wrong. So that's a big I want to say big mistake, but it is something that I struggle with a lot on this composition and on this painting today. I'm moving on to paint the buildings, and I have to do them a bit like cool but also a bit brownish, because that's kind of what their color is, and they're getting mostly light from the sky, not really directly from the sun yet, so therefore their color has to be in the cooler side. And I kind of like that contrast of the buildings being cool and the snow bank and the trees on behind being warm. It just balances the painting so well. And if we can find these kinds of compositions or subjects, it makes our life easier as painters. Finding that contrast, or should I say natural contrast between things that maybe kind of don't belong to each other, but they kind of do, like there's a certain harmony to them. I always look up to those artists that can paint things that for me they seem so noisy, so mundane, or just so man-made, you can say, and make them look interesting and kind of almost nostalgic. And I never understood how they do that. I think it's just by understanding their subject very well, not really thinking about what emotion they want to bring out from the viewer, but more like their own reaction to the scene. Maybe it brings something that's close to home to them, something that they experienced. Maybe it's somewhere they grew up, or I don't know. I think that having a connection to the place that you're painting or the object that you're painting, or should I say the subject that you're painting, does give you an unfair advantage on other people that try to paint the same thing, because they don't have that emotion that you have for the place. They don't have that emotional attachment that you do. And that, I think that that's a very big weapon for any artist. If you paint something that is true to you, something that is meaningful to you, your paintings will always come through into saying that. Maybe you don't have the ability to paint as well as you want technique wise, but I can almost guarantee that if you have that emotional connection to your subject, your paintings, even if they're not technically the best, they will still come out very good, and people will just not know how to describe like why your painting is so good, even if the technique or colors or composition is not there. There's still something that you're bringing into the table of like painting that setting, if you know what I mean. Like for me, this kind of setting of snow being hit by bright light or direct soft light, I should say, and making these very nice saturated blue, magenta shadow color, and the top part, the highlight, is a bit of a, I don't know, it's a orange pinkish glow. Oh, it's just, it really touches something within me that I cannot understand. And I mean, I didn't even grow up in this kind of weather. I did not grow up here in Norway. I'm actually originally from Mexico, which is a very interesting thing to me, that I feel so at home in a place that is so different from where I was actually born. I always say that Norway is my true home. When I moved here, or actually when I traveled through here, it was the first time I really felt like home, and that's always fascinated me. And one thing that I've always wanted to do is paint as much of Norway as I can. I wanted to live in my car, which I did for a month and a half, and drive around and paint the landscapes of Norway. But it was right around when I faced the burnout at work, and that was not possible. So I ended up not doing that. But maybe in the future, who knows? But for now, I'm just gonna stick to places around my home and just really enjoy. I mean, I still enjoy these kinds of views, and now you can see that I'm adding the trees. I'm trying to feather out some of the branches, and now the painting is slowly starting to take shape. Of course, it's still the first mid-tone layer, but at least for me, I was like, okay, here are the trees. That was one of the focuses of today, making those trees glow. And for those trees to glow, I really have to make sure that I use a lot, or yeah, I have to use a lot of paint for the buildings. They have to be darker. If the buildings are not dark enough, those trees are not gonna pop. The sense of light is not gonna be there. So that is one of the main points for this painting. And I did make a big mistake at the end, and you will see that when we get there. and I'll talk about it a little bit. But now I'm just adding the grass, dried grass that also looks orange, but is like this desaturated yellow when you look at it close. That's one of the things that also is very hard. You know in your head what something looks like or what color it is, and therefore you make decisions based off of what you think you know, instead of looking at what you're seeing and understanding what you're seeing. And again, I'm using my trusty nail to pick out some trunks. Sorry for the sidetracking there. It is very interesting how our brain is so good at giving us something that looks like what we thought we knew it was, but it's actually just a representation of the real thing. I mean, if you think about it, when you look outdoors and you try to paint, there's just so much information. If your brain was processing every single detail that we see or that we're able to see, I mean, we would be completely overwhelmed. This is why our eyes have a very wide view, but when you're focused, your focus angle, like area, is only about like 2 degrees of total focus that you can have at one time, whilst your peripheral vision can just take the whole thing in. So as artists, we actually want to exploit the powers of squinting, of being able to see less detail. Of course, it really differs between painter and painter, but everybody uses squinting. I mean, look it up. If you have taken a course in painting or have been following some sort of big master painter, at some point you probably heard about squinting. It is such a good tool, and I don't use it enough, to be honest. I sometimes forget that I can squint. So here, as you can see, learning from the previous day's mistakes, I am focused on making those buildings very, very dark and opaque. So using a lot of paint. And I'm kind of having a proud moment of myself for doing that. Progress is being made by day 5. I mean, probably by day 2 as well, but it wasn't really showing. And I feel like today is one of those days that the painting is already looking like something, you know. I could stop right now and it would be fine. Of course, if you look at it up close, you will see that there's no detail at all, but you can kind of tell what it is. Maybe not exactly what it is because you're not familiar with this view like I am, but if I give you the reference photo and pointed at it, you'll be like, oh yeah, that's nice. I mean, it kind of looks like that, or at least it has the same sensation or impression of light and a bit of the color as well. And by this point, I remember feeling like I was almost done. Not completely done, but almost done. And you can see me adding a bit of detail here and there. I'm not exactly sure what I was trying to add. I think I was confused. I was like, oh, what do I add to this scene? Because I didn't really want to copy what I was seeing because it was very noisy, and I also didn't know how to simplify it. And that's why there's so much hesitation from my side right now that I don't know what to do. I decide to check the watch and I see that I still have 3 minutes left, and here is where I made the biggest mistake in the whole painting. I could have just quit right here, right now, be done, and be happy. But what did I want to do? I wanted to fix something. And then usually in watercolor, that doesn't go well. What I wanted to do is get that glow of the snow that I could see. I mean, I felt like the color was off, or actually I felt like the brightness of the color that I put was so little that it was not really coming through. And rule number 1 of watercolor painting, don't add more where you want your highlights to be, one of your lightest values. Don't do it. I don't know why I did this I thought I could fix it, but at the end of the day I couldn't. And I just seeing this breaks my heart to see how I ruined this painting by doing that. What I could have done instead was enhance the darkness of the shadows. That would have really offset the brightness of the snow, and it would read so much better. So much better than trying to add that glow. I think that even if I didn't have any color on top of the snow, and I would have focused more on the shadow side of the snow, it would have looked so much better. It would actually do exactly the thing that I wanted to do, make that snow pop. And here you're gonna see me try to undo what I did by adding some water and then dabbing the dry paper towel on it in a desperate attempt to undo my big mistake. And I knew it. But you live and you learn. That is the bad thing about watercolor. There's no undos. You just have to paint it again. And I guess that's good, because then you get more time to practice and get better. After this, I called it quits. I was like, yeah, that's enough. If I keep going, I'm just gonna keep making stupid mistakes. So this is gonna be the finished painting for today. And I absolutely loved it, to be honest. I think that this is a milestone. I think that I did a great job at capturing exactly the light that I wanted to capture. So yeah, pretty happy with today. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you tomorrow.